All right, here we are. We're going to make this cute little bead today. We're going to do some different eyes than these. These are just glued on. This is for me, not for any baby or anything like that. And this is made out of loops and threads, Sweet Snuggles polyester yarn. You need black and yellow. Now I do have the one thing I don't like about this yarn is when you get on the end, it's hard to sew in because it kind of just sheds right off of the string. Okay, so he pollinates. Now the black one isn't quite as fragile. It does come off, but you have to pull it a little bit more. So that's the negative about this yarn. Other than that, when you make it, it is super soft and cuddly and so fun to hold. So there's our little bee we're going to make. And we're going to do some crochet round eyes so they're baby safe completely. And these are just regular acrylic yarn that we're going to use for the wings. So let's get started. Okay, now what you're going to need for this is an 11.5 millimeter or a size P crochet hook. You're going to need your scissors and a very large yarn needle, and the plastic ones usually work the best for this kind because they have a larger hole. You're going to need the black and the yellow, of course, and you're going to need some white and black and regular acrylic yarn. And this is my bag of scraps, so I save all these scraps so I can put them in the stuffing, but not for this pattern, not for this big chunky yarn, because the holes are a little bit too big. You know, they're really cute and fluffy, but the little stuffing would come out if it was this kind. So we save all the scraps so we can stuff another creature that we're going to make next time. I made some frogs and they turned out so cute. So let's get started on the bumblebee. This is baby Buzzy. We are going to do the magic loop. Okay. And then you're just going to grab your yarn here and pull through. Now, if you don't know how to do the magic loop, I do have a video on that. And it is further back. I can link it in the description. Now we're going to do single crochet, and you're going to do 11 of these. 1, 2. This is a very easy, quick project. 3, 4. And this yarn is super soft to work with, but when you pull from your magic loop, you have to pull really up close here and pretty careful. So you have to pull it really close and careful because this will slide off. 2, 3, 4. So we have, and these stitches are easy to count if you lose track because look, they are so large that you can see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you need 6. Make sure your tail stays out. 7. 8, 9, 10, and 11. All right, here we are with our 11 stitches, and I did mess up a minute ago, so if there's a glitch in this, that is the reason. Okay, so now we are going to do 1 stitch in each stitch, 1 single crochet in each stitch. stitch, because we are not enlarging the size of this circle. We are just starting to go out from here. So all you're doing is one stitch around. It's a very simple project for beginners. All you're doing is single crochet. Now we're about to have to add some more in, because this color, this is pieced together from the last project. So let's put him up next to this one. He needs one more row of yellow. The new yarn is the simplest way, okay, because we don't want to have to sew in and do all of that if we can avoid it. So we're going to do one pull through and then tighten it down. We're going to pull it through. Now you pull the yellow tight around the black. Now you have 2 tails to crochet in, and you're just going to do one row of single crochets. Stick that through there. Now here's his little face right there, and we are going to make some eyes. Okay, here we are with our regular 4-ply yarn. We're going to make little black eyes, and we're going to use a regular 4.25 millimeter or a G needle. Now you want to make your magic circle. And you are going to do 6 singles in your circle. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then you're going to pull your tail closed. I made quite a long tail for that. And let's see, I'm going to slip this together. And I think that's as big as that eye needs to be. So we're going to cut this off and make a second one. And right now you just leave these tails because you're going to sew your eye in with the tails. Okay, so I'm going to make another one. Okay, now we have 2 little black eyes, 2 little beady black eyes, and we're going to thread our needle here, and we're going to sew this on. And you just place it wherever you want it, right about there, because you don't want it on the front, you want it on the side. And you're just going to sew this in, and that's where the knot is, so it's being a little difficult. This is a very large needle because of the large yarn. And you're just going to come back through and just make sure, see what I'm doing? I'm going through the same hole, so that won't work. You need to make sure that you go around some of the thread and then angle it to come back through, because you want to make sure when you sew it that you're looping around some thread inside there. Okay, it's not too tricky to sew it on. You just have to take your time and make sure you loop around some thread and come back through. Now you need to do this with, whoops, I lost the thread because it's so short. You need to do this with both eyes, and you do it with both pieces of the tails, okay? So you've got 2 tails to do on each eye, and that will help secure it even more. Even though this is a long needle, think I'm going to get a smaller needle to finish this. When you get the needles, you usually have a couple different sizes. Here's the smallest one. There's 3 sizes. So I'm going to switch to the small one, which will work better for this small yarn. But if you need to sew your eyes on, just go ahead and pause the video here, and I'm going to finish getting both of my eyes sewed on, and then I'll come back and we'll finish our little bee. Okay, now that we have his 2 little eyes sewn on, we're going to tuck that toe back in there. I did loosen this up so I could pull the needle off, and we are going to start back on our little bee. Now we did 1 row of black, and we are going to switch that, leave a long tail again. We don't need that one right now. And we're going to switch back to the yellow. And you want a long tail for that. And I'm just going to leave these little tails inside for part of the stuffing. You just leave them in there. And here we are ready to start our next row. We're just going to do singles all the way around. Now that we've done 1 yellow, we're going to switch back, cut a long tail, stuff it in there, and go back to the black. We're going to cut another long tail, stuff it down in there. He's halfway stuffed with all the tails. That's what I like about stuffing the tails in. And then you grab your yellow, pull it through. We gotta tighten the black up so it's just the one. And then back to the singles. I did slip stitch that together. I'm going to go up 1, and right here I'm going to skip a stitch and do a single. I'm going to skip a stitch and do a single because you want them to close off pretty quickly. Skip a stitch and do a single, and you're going to skip 1 and do another single. You're going to skip 1 and do another single. And if that hole is getting smaller, skip 1 and do another single. See, right here you have a pretty small hole. So we are going to stuff him with some polyfill. Now I do keep the polyfill in just a grocery sack because it's easier to work with instead of that very large bag. And now you're just going to stuff your little bee until you have the softness that you want. And that's pretty good. Look how big he is compared to that one. Boop, there they are. He's pretty big. Here we go. I think that's stuffed enough. So you can stuff it to where it feels right for you. It's really a matter of your personal preference. And we're going to start slip stitching. Okay, we're not doing singles anymore. You're just going to slip stitch around. And then you're going to skip 1 and slip stitch. Okay. And then about right here, we still have a little bit of a hole left. But I am going to cut this off, cut a very long tail. This is probably, what, 12 inches or so. Okay. Back up just a little bit so you can see that length of tail. It's quite long. It's at least 12 inches. And then we're going to pull this through. See, he lost some on that. And then tighten that down as much as you can. And that one didn't tighten very well. We're going to use our very large needle. And to put this on the needle, you have to double it over so it won't shed as soon as you start sticking it on. Okay, pull that through there. Pull it up a pretty good ways so it won't shed. Now you're just going to sew through here and close up this hole. Now you can come back here like that. See how there's a space there? You can kind of go in that space and it will close up that hole a little bit. You can just go around and do that on those that last few rows. And you're just going in and weaving this yarn in all around until you don't have any yarn left to weave in. This is how I like to close them up because of the shedding, but also because it weaves your yarn in where it won't come loose at all. And you can't see the end hole is very much once you weave through everything. It kind of makes it disappear. And you're just weaving through. Just weaving it in. This is a weaving the ends in, but you see how it's shedding as I go. It's just shedding and shedding and shedding. Now, take your needle off and that's what you get. It's pretty funny, but there's the shedding that I did just now while I was working on this bee. And one little piece of black. So now you've got your end here. You pick all the shedding off, trim off the end. Make sure he's not going to shed anymore. And this can all go in your bag of scraps for stuffing something else. There he is. Okay, and there's his two little eyes. Now you can make the eyes out of felt, or you can make them out of crochet, or you can make the safety eyes or the googly eyes. Now this little guy needs some wings, so let's get busy making some wings. Okay, now we're going to make his wings, and we're going to make 2 circles. But on this one, you have to end your circle early. I'll explain that when we get to it. So we are going to do 6 singles in the circle. 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I think my magic lip is very large. I'm going to have a really long tail. There we go. Now we're going to slip stitch this together. And you're going to chain 2. And we're going to do half doubles. You can do singles, or you can do half doubles, or you could even do a double if you wanted. But you're going to do 2 stitches in each stitch. Okay, no matter which one you're doing. I'm doing a half double, just so it goes a little faster and they're still small. Now we're only making 3 rounds. But the 3rd round is going to be a partial round. See how you have a flat spot here? That's what you want on the 3rd round. This one we're going to go ahead and go all the way around. I'm going to finish this round with 2 stitches per thing. per stitch. Whoop. And then we're going to slip this together. Now on this third round, we are going to chain 2. We are going to have double and do 2 stitches and then 1 stitch. Okay, 2 and then 1. You don't want it to be real lumpy. And if you increase too quickly, you will get it to be lumpy. And then 1. And then we've got 2. And 1. 2. And 1. And 2. And 1. Now you kind of watch it from here because you need your line to come across. So we're going to go 2 here and 1 here. It's not a perfect line, but you can get a straight line there pretty much. So you're going to stop at that. Okay? You're leaving 2 stitches open at the end. So I'm going to pause the video, or you pause the video here. And I'm going to go make my second wing while you make your second wing. And then we'll come back with 2 wings and I'll show you how to attach them to your little bee. So I'll see you in a second. Okay, here are our 2 wings. And once we put them together, they'll go right there in the center. Here's the 2 eyes, and then right here is the center where the wings will go. So let's get these sewn together. We're going to use the smaller of these needles, and you're going to put them right side together because you do have a right and a wrong side. Whichever one looks the prettiest is the right side. So put the 2 right sides together, and you're going to take one of these tails and you're just going to stitch these 2 together on the edge and just make them into one piece. And so that's why you want the flat side of the circles. And I can't give you a pattern to this because I didn't really follow a pattern. I just kind of looked at some pictures and kind of made it up as I go. And most of the wings, they did have 2 full circles, but I just liked the way that this worked out better. So I made the wings together, and then we're going to take this end and sew it right in to this one side and get rid of that one there because that's not long enough to do anything else with, except for being a scrap to fill. And when we make the frogs, I'll show you how we do that. Now these 2 are the centers, and for some reason, there we go, that magic circle wasn't closed up all the way. We're going to sew these 2 in because they're in the middle of the wing, and we can't use those for sewing it on. So we're just going to sew these ends in. And just go in the side of the stitch. And if you're working with something and you don't want a long thread, you just make sure your needle is not showing across this way, and you'll be fine. Because you don't want one long thread across the front of something. That's really all you do when you sew your threads in. Is you put it through the stitches, but not where it's going to show on the other side. Just right in here. And you look over there and you're in the middle of those stitches, so you're good. And once you've done it a few times, you should, be able to do it without checking every time. I don't always check. You just go right in the center. And that's all you need there. Now, the fun and the final part of this little guy is thread this one on because you've still got one tail there. You're going to get right in the center of where the eyes are and figure out where you want it. And you're going to sew it right under these threads. And come up through the middle of that white. And make sure it's going to loop around these big threads. And that is pretty much it. Just sew this on, and you can go across a little extra time. And you're sewing it one direction, but it's going to loop around. It's going to lay flat when you get it done. That's what I was trying to say. There we go. And when you open it up, you have little flat wings. Let me cut this tail off because he doesn't need to be sewn on anymore. And there you are with your little wings on your bee. And there's your cute little bee. Now you can give it a little stinger if you want, but I think that's just unnecessary for this little guy.